Welcome to Film Freaks. This is Justin Llewellyn.
And Eddie Williams.
And now we are having our spoiler-filled discussion of Logan. For those of you who are wanting to watch our regular spoiler-free review, you're welcome to check that under the link and on our page. And if you don't want to be spoiled of what happens in the film. So basically with this film, with Logan, it's set in 2029, like the far future, where basically Logan is now pretty much has aged more, and as we talked about in the previous review, he's pretty much losing his powers, his healing abilities.
I believe he was hit or poisoned or something.
From what I heard,
powers, but then it said that you can no longer be invincible. You're gonna slowly go ahead and die like a human.
Yeah, basically the adamantium that's in his body has poisoned him to the point where he no longer heals as fast like he used to. So the film pretty much.
And then Xavier, he's dying of Alzheimer's and got some dementia problems.
Yeah, Xavier is basically suffering from a brain disease that's slowly making him having seizures and basically making him lose his memory, and he's hallucinating. And throughout the film, at the beginning of the film, it shows that Logan is having to adjust to being a chauffeur after. Well, it basically starts with him being attacked by these Mexican guys, and he kills them in like a very fucking gruesome way when we first start out.
When that opening scene, Mexicans went and started messing with him and stuff, and then, they shoot him, and you're like, he's gonna be fucking badass still. But you could tell the vulnerability, because when they shoot him a couple times, he's like, it starts to like really slowly come together, like where he's injured, but he's not getting up fast enough. Where you can tell he's pretty worn up.
Yeah, at this point.
But anyway, when he started cutting those dudes up, that's when I was like, oh my god, the brutality is going to be this big. Hell yes.
Yeah, I was already down for it from the opening, especially when he's slicing them dudes left and right, and you see him like stabbing in the throats.
That dude's fucking arm off, and it showed all those veins and blood come out. I was like, damn!
Yeah, they get really, he does some fucked up shit to these guys throughout the movie. So, as we see in the very beginning, we see that he's slowly having to recover, because we see, like, the part where he's in the bathroom and he's pulling the bullets out. You notice that his skin is taking longer to heal, because he's basically, his adamantium can't take it anymore. And so, as the film pretty much goes along, we see that he's adjusted to taking care of Xavier in this, like, kind of it's like this, kind of like, I don't know what it is. It's like a circle kind of thing.
It's kind of like a water, like a dome water dome or something, like an old water tower. And basically, he keeps them in the magnesium or magnetic shit kind of holds the seizures at bay, where he can't hurt like anybody's seizures.
Yeah,
like,
and
he's like a closed can. But at the same time, we got Wolverine, who's kind of living kind of like a normal life, where he's a limo driver, and it shows him picking up medicine from a doctor.
Yeah, where that's how he's attending to Charles, is by getting illegal drugs from the hospital by paying this guy off, and that's when we also
get. It's really cool, because this is now a superhero film that is actually taking a more just an everyday life form, like a gritty, realistically life. It just like you can tell like it's been so many years since the mutants were alive, and it seemed more of an action. They take a really gritty approach, kind of like if you mixed a modern Mad Max.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. And plus, and not just that, but we get introduced to... We didn't talk about this in our previous review because I wanted to save it here for the spoiler. We get introduced to the villain of the film, who's Donald Pierce, who's that guy with the robot hand who works for the corporation that goes after... who basically, at first, wants to come across Wolverine like, hey, if I know you're pretty much struggling, so why don't you come work for us? And Logan's pretty much saying, no, I don't want that. I have my own matters. And basically...
It's not only that. He gets in the car, he's looking for that girl.
Yeah, he's looking for the girl,
and there was a funeral that happened.
Yeah.
That we forgot to mention.
Well, yeah, because the Mexican guys that he killed was related to the girl that shows up at this funeral, who tries to come to Wolverine to try to help her and her daughter. And you got
to mention also the comic books are realistically in this universe.
Yeah, they are, and so with the villain's plan this time, the Pierce Pierce wants to try to get the girl to bring her to the actual transigen place or whatever, and as well, we'll get into this later, but basically it shows that Logan is skeptical at first. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't want nothing to do with about this girl or anything. So throughout the film, he's trying to tend to Xavier, while at the same time he realizes that to get more medicine, he gets he basically he meets the girl that we saw, or I'm sorry, the mother that was at the funeral. He goes to attend her, and she offers him a way to try to repay him by taking him to her and the girl to this location in North Dakota, which is called, as we established later, it's called Eden.
Yeah.
And basically,
which later he finds in his book, it's actually in the comic book.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
Cool to see that we get the comic books and action figures that you've all grown up into as a kid. These are actually realistic shit in this universe.
Yeah, it's shown at this point the movie has pretty much, this universe has now gone meta by showing that the comic books actually exist in this universe, which I really liked, because it shows that reality, it's like a reality versus fiction kind of element, kind of similar to how they did with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Yeah. And so I really like that approach they did with it, because as we see toward the course of the film, we see that Logan knows that the comic books, he thinks the comic books are all bullshit, and that in real life, people die, actually. And that becomes pretty much a major plot point, because as we see throughout the rest of the movie, him and Xavier, he realizes that the girl is left by herself after the mother dies, and it's up to, after the corporation goes after the girl, basically Logan and Xavier and that other guy, the Caliban.
He's the guy who used to track them down back in the old movies.
Yeah, if you remember, that character was also in X-Men Apocalypse at the beginning, who was the one that set up all the cage fights.
Yep.
For the Archangel and Nightcrawler. Or I'm sorry, not him. I'm sorry, I don't think it was that. It was something where he was pretty much tracking the mutants. He worked for if I remember in X-Men Apocalypse, he's the one that worked for that Psylocke girl, or Cyclops girl in Apocalypse. So.
Well, anyway, you get the girl X-23 jumped in to the limo when Wolverine ended up finding the bomb dead.
Yeah. And then we see that X-23 has pretty much has the same powers as Wolverine, because when we first see her, at first she comes across as just a regular little girl, but then when the guys are going after her, you see all the fucking brutality she does, because she starts stabbing motherfuckers left and right with the
and that's when that metal hand dude showed up again. He's like, I need the girl.
Yeah, and
I like how he's like the Pierce plays like that Southern guy.
Yeah, I like
Southern redneck. I do like that.
Yeah, he kind of remind me of. He kind of remind me of someone that you would probably see off of the later seasons of The Walking Dead, like in a good way. I think that he would probably be one of those kind of guys that he comes across as kind of genuine in some parts, but that he is fucking to the point where he's like, no, you give me that little girl because we got to do business here.
Well, when he ran into Wolverine in the first scene where it's in the limo, he got into the Wolverine's limo, and Wolverine, this is something we don't see every day. Wolverine's like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of my limo.
Yeah.
This movie has got cussing, and we hear like F-bombs everywhere. But not only that, there's actually a scene where Logan is working in the limo taking these strippers, and they were flashing titties. Hey, driver. I've never seen nudity in a fucking superhero film in a long time.
Yeah, I mean they did that in Deadpool last year, but
Deadpool was next for that hard R shit. But like to do this in an X-Men film felt weird.
Well, yeah, that's
weird.
what I'm.
Now when it's in the same universe and you're seeing like chicks pulling their clothes off, I'm like, hell yeah.
Well, yeah, not just that, but as far as pushing the hard R, we also see a lot of scenes with not only the major blood shedding with a lot of the action parts, but also it's weird seeing Charles Xavier cuss a lot in this movie too, because he's saying F-bombs left and right.
Yeah, he's like, shut the fuck up, Logan.
He's like, fuck off, Logan.
Fuck off, Logan.
Yeah,
but that was actually pretty cool, and they were talking shit to each other.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like I said in my previous review that we said was I love the banter with him back and forth, because you can tell that at this point, Logan.
Well, you can tell in Logan thinking in the beginning, he's became an alcoholic, and he became like a grumpy old bastard.
Yeah, in a way, he's kind of having, and he's also having like a lot of coughing in a lot of scenes because he's suffering from pretty much a disease that's from the adamantium. So,
With all the alcohol and drugs he hates that he's been doing ever since he started falling apart.
yeah,
Like he just became like a drug addict, an alcoholic.
yeah, and another thing I appreciated too with this film is I love a lot of the parts that involve where you see a lot of the moments with the girl where she's kind of learning to adapt certain things, like that are just little funny parts here and there that actually was surprising for a gritty movie like this, like the parts where she's trying to learn how to use a fork, or like the parts where she's trying to get like the sunglasses, like you see in the trailer with the sunglasses, and then she's about to kill a dude.
We're at that part where the Pierce and his armor team ended up catching what's his face?
I'm sorry, who?
That Clement guy, or whatever his name is, I can't think of his name.
Caliban?
Callan. Yeah, so we were talking about this earlier and we stopped for a while. So we're going back to that. So now we take you to the scene where pretty much Xavier, the girl was in Wolverine's trunk, and then she came out the trunk, and basically they get this big thing that Xavier's been saying that she's a superhero. She's one of you, she is one of the mutants.
Yeah.
Logan, he's kind of playing like a hard-headed dude. He's like, she no damn mutant. Let's just leave her alone. We got more shit to do.
Yeah, and then throughout the course of the film, you start to later see a lot of the dynamic between him and her, and not just that, but we find out more about her throughout the film too, because basically, to pretty much sum it up, she is part of a genetic program that's from that same corporation that went after her, and she and these other groups of children are part of these cloning process of mutants, and basically they're able to adapt to, they're pretty much clones of the same kind of genetics that previous mutants had, and as we see later in the film. What's that?
Yeah, he shows up. The metal hand shows up by himself, trying to beat Logan to death, but Logan ended up, that little girl ended up knocking the dude out. So that's where Flamin, or whatever that dude's name, I can't think of his freaking name.
Caliban?
Yeah, Caliban, or whatever his name is. But Logan tells him to take Pierce out to the desert and drop him off in the fucking ditch. And then when he does, and that's when that dude takes Caliban hostage.
Yeah, and you know what I really enjoy a lot too is that, well, I'm not trying to really go over the entire course of the film, but I will say that some of the biggest highlights I have with this movie is a lot of the really emotional parts, especially when we get later in the film, where we get pretty much like we talked about in our previous view, when they meet up with the family. And that right there is where all the shit that comes down is really getting to me, because I was in the theater pretty much crying when we get to this part. So,
so you need, when Charles and them, I think where you really want to see a realistic, where it's time to start thinking about more human-natured mutants. Basically they're not mutants no more. I mean, they're pretty much falling so much apart that they're pretty much, thinking about regular family crap. Is whenever they do get that, where they help those black people when they lost their horse, that black family, they're like a family that's out in the country that does a lot of horse races.
yeah.
And basically, when Xavier helps them with their horse by commanding them, like he had a little bit of power he could use still, and basically they're invited to dinner and to stay the night for helping them. And this is where you really see a more emotional approach and more realistic approach, because they actually, get a lot of scenes where they're sitting down having dinner, and they're basically just laughing and lollygagging and just enjoying like realistic life, like what we go through. You, me, everybody.
Yeah,
and
not just...
You just think it's Thanksgiving. You just see Xavier just smiling, and you see Logan smiling, you see her smiling, and it feels like they're one big happy family.
Yeah, and then when that really does really get to me, because as we see later in the film, while Logan and the father are going out to pretty much fix this water process, or this water pump or whatever, because there's a scene where it shows where Xavier is trying to take his pills but he can't swallow it. So Logan and the father go out to fix his pump, and then, well, at that point they come across these like these guys that are trying to trying to kick him off and shit.
Racist cows, like a bunch of racist cowboys.
Yeah.
They draw him because whatever and stuff. Basically, yeah, they're fucking with the black dude and all that stuff, but then Logan's just like a little bitch and some little helper, and that's where Logan starts whooping some ass.
But basically, what I want to get to was we get introduced. Well, we see that Xavier is telling Logan that there is a story that a prior that he was suffering a seizure, and basically it gets really heartbreaking. Not only is he telling him that he pretty much killed some of the mutants back at the school, but he was pretty much having a seizure while doing it. And then we get one of the most heartbreaking moments in the film where we see that this guy.
Heartbreaking moment, you get the scene where he's talking about breaking down the Logan how it doesn't feel good to have family.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. That and
like to just be something normal.
That's what I'm saying. And that and
David is having regrets of wanting to where he lived the whole mutant life and all that stuff. He's regretting it now. He's wishing he would have lived a normal life.
Yeah, and he felt like it was perfect that he was able to be at a place that he can feel like his home. And then we get the most heartbreaking part where we discover that who he's talking to is actually, in fact, another clone that's pretty much the perfect clone of Logan, who's a shaved version of him where he has like shorter hair.
Well, and Logan was in his prime.
Yeah.
Back 20 years ago, his strongest point of his lifespan back in the old days, it was the strongest point of him. Then they made him even more powerful than that.
Yeah, and he has the same healing ability. That's actually accurate. That's actually fixed. And then we get to the part where basically it shows that since this is not Logan, this is X-24. He stabs Xavier in the chest, and right there, I really almost broke down crying right there. When I seen that part happen, I was like, no.
Yeah, he starts slicing tunnels. That's all.
Yeah. And not just that, but afterwards we also see that he slaughters the entire family. And
yeah, this is when we start actually seeing kids get slaughtered.
Yeah, we see the son gets murdered, and then the wife gets murdered.
Yeah.
And then Laura tries to stop him, but he's just so powerful that basically it results to Logan trying to fight him when he comes back, and not even Logan is having a hard time because he's getting stabbed left and right from him. And then we see that there's another guy that comes into play who is a scientist whose father, if you remember from X-Men Apocalypse when it showed Logan's scene in that part where he escapes, he killed. Well, no, it's not Stryker. It's the other guy, the guy who was he was one of the scientists who invented the Weapon X program. He was killed in Apocalypse by Wolverine, but his son is the one in this film, in Logan. He's the one who pretty much come up with the research that basically we reveal that wiped out all the mutants in this in this timeline. And so when he gets introduced, he is the one who created the new version of Wolverine as the perfect clone. And
then we find out that the Metalhead and Pierce is actually one of his main soldiers that he uses.
Right, and then we see that Caliban pretty much has after he gets captured from them from earlier, he shows that in order to pretty much try to get the girl loose and try to sacrifice himself, he takes these grenades out, which I thought was a cool heroic sacrifice where he blows the whole fucking truck up.
He damn near killed it, almost killed Pierce with them, but he killed the other soldiers with them. But the sad thing is, we forget to mention earlier, you know his name. I keep forgetting it.
Caliban?
Caliban. Before he blows and sacrifices himself up, we forgot to mention the enduring torture he faced on his journey to this place.
Yeah, you see a lot of...
Pierce was torturing the shit out of him, making him melt through the sun and burning him, and beating him, and starving him, and everything.
Yeah, he was Pierce in that scene was reminding me of the governor, or I'm sorry, Negan from Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And man, because, you really feel sorry for the guy after that. It's like, damn. And then when he sacrificed himself, it's like, man, he at least, he actually went out with a bang and tried to, do the right thing. And basically...
When X-24 and Wolverine go at it, holy shit.
I know.
It gets bloody.
Yeah.
I mean, guts getting ripped out, arms coming right, and guys, oh my god, it gets bad.
Yeah, it does. And then afterwards, when we see that Logan is pretty much so damaged from fighting, we see that throughout the rest, they bury Xavier, and man, that whole scene where he's burying him too, where it's very quiet, where it's just Laura having holding his hand. That right there, if you would have watched the trailer, you pretty much kind of already knew that that's pretty much Charles's grave. But
yeah. Well, not only that little poem or the little thing he's mentioning, where he's trying to say, but then he starts crying and stuff. Man, that was emotional.
Yeah, it was, especially the part where he's banging on the truck and everything with the shovel. I mean, it just shows the damage that he's pretty much gotten from not only losing one of his most valuable, most precious mentors, is basically a father figure that he always had. Yep. And and throughout the rest of the movie, it kind of takes a very slow turn where he's pretty much on the verge of sleeping throughout, and Laura wants him to still take him to North Dakota to where it's Eden, and that's.
Well, he's at the point now where he starts contemplating suicide with that bullet.
Yeah, because that if you remember, well, I don't know if this is really connected to X-Men Origins because the new timeline, but basically, in X-Men Origins Wolverine, when Stryker shot him in the head, it seems to me that Wolverine kept that bullet, and then when the timeline changed, he still had that same bullet. So that, in a way, that still kind of calls back to Wolverine Origins, but it done right, at least in that regard. So, yeah, he kept that bullet for over the years, and basically it all results to them going to Eden, which is in North Dakota, and they come across these kids, and basically the film kind of, in a way, I'm not trying to, really go too much into comparison, but it kind of becomes Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I was watching, you know what? This could actually be. This kind of reminds me of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome at this point.
Yeah, like a Thunderdome, Peter Panish, where the kids that was in the hospital, a couple of them were able to escape, and they were waiting on Laura, which is X-23, to get there.
Yeah.
So they can get to the safe haven. They were just waiting on her.
Yeah, and we discovered that these other kids, they have similar mutant abilities from previous ones. Like one girl has or one of the kids has ice breath, the other kid has telekinesis. So you're kind of, in theory, I think.
Attention actually on that scene, a lot of them actually have the same traits that the original X-Men people have.
Yeah,
That's
which we're pretty much assuming that they took that. In this timeline, we receive that those mutants that previously died, the ones that we know and love, those kids are getting their DNA from them that were still alive, and so that's what I kind of figured. But basically, we get to the final climax that shows that the people that are from the corporation, they're going to still try to get Laura. And that's when we actually get to where it becomes Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, where the kids are helping out because they're running away to try to go across the border to Canada, which is supposed to be a paradise or whatever.
Where they're safe haven.
Yeah.
Where they can't be grabbed or taken away or anything. It's like their safe haven. But this is where Pierce, that doctor, and his whole army end up meeting them at the border and blocking it off. So now they got to go kind of facing across before they end up getting captive by this guy.
Yeah, and then that's when we get to our final climax, which results to Wolverine. A scene from that earlier showed that Logan has this. One of the kids had a serum that pretty much enhances abilities temporarily, and so when he takes that, he pretty much becomes full Wolverine again to actually attack the guys and save the kids.
Well, Wolverine on that scene where he had that onion with X-24 and all that, he realized that he looked down and his body is no longer. It actually completely stopped healing. From here on out, he's going to eventually die.
Yeah, and that's when it
really.
You
know that, okay, I need to stick myself with the serum because this is it right here.
Yeah, and it really pushed the stakes even more higher because when you get to the part where he's about to fight them, it shows that he knows he's about to die, but he tries to have a plan by taking these bullets, and he shoots the fucking doctor using a gun for the first time, which I thought, for a guy who uses hands, I can really buy him in that kind of situation where he would use a gun. because I thought that was pretty
Well,
clever.
I think there were more gritty of real life effects, so it's kind of like it respects the grittiness of like realistic shit.
Yeah,
So
and then
that's the reason why I did that.
yeah, and then after he pretty much has after the final battle takes place, where the kids end up killing that Pierce and using their all combined powers.
Oh my god, man! They all combined powers. They tore his ass up.
Absolutely, yeah, and it was
my
fucking great.
God, it's fucking brutal. Brutal
Yeah.
fucking cool. And I like that one dude that had Storm's powers, and they were able to fight the dude's arm and it had broken in half.
Yeah, I remember that.
Damn.
Yeah, and then we see that with the final battle taking place with X-24 and Logan, who at first it's X-23 and X-24 fighting, which was a cool fight, but then we see that Logan's still trying to get the kids away after he's pretty much down, and we see that, and the most iconic part of the film for me is when Laura is trying to get the kids away and everything, and Wolverine still attacks, or X-24 attacks Logan, and then he impales him on a branch, and that's when you know that it's pretty much come to an end.
Yeah.
And then we see,
the
and then
serum stopped working, so
Yeah.
he took it all, and that was it. I'm the last bit of the serum they had left.
and then we see that using the same adamantium bullets, Laura kills X-24 with a bullet in the head by adamantium, which. And then we get the most beautiful and most heartbreaking scene where we see that Laura is holding Logan's hand, and we see that in his final words, he's telling her to pretty much, the whole dialogue is basically, she's don't go through this, don't pretty much have the same life that he had, and he's finally come to accept the nature of being a father figure, and she even says daddy, and that right there,
And you can see that he's trying to hold her hand, he's shaking.
yeah,
And
and
he's basically telling her, no matter what you do, you keep running and keep getting away.
yeah, and man,
And
at that.
I was like, oh
that-
man, no.
That part right there, I was like, I felt like I wanted to cry in theaters because I was about to, but I didn't want to like really, I guess I might have been a little nervous, kind of just crying in the theaters. But believe me, when I came home after watching that ending with it right there, where he's dying right there in his last words, I seriously like took a whole 2 hours and just had no words. I was like crying so much.
Yeah, it was a tearjerker from hell, and then especially when she's saying daddy.
Yeah,
All that stuff.
and then
when
she.
he finally dies, they bury him, and as a goodbye, because people don't realize that Wolverine would be the official last X-Men to finally pass away. She turned over the cross and spelled it as an X.
Yeah, and that I thought was a great way of sending a great closure. And basically,
If you could actually blow X-Men off like that.
yeah, if this was the last movie, I guarantee you this would be the most perfect way to end it. I mean, we're going to get more movies coming out in the future, but I feel like with this one, if they end it right here, then this would be the perfect way to cap it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the way that it takes a very kind of realistic approach where it's very grounded and not doing things that are very different from your traditional superhero films. That's what to me stands out the most with this movie, and I love it absolutely.
I 100% agree with you. This movie is 100% prose. I have no cons to this film. The realistic approach is just mind blowing. The grittiness, mind blowing. I like to change the tone from what your typical superhero film. I like to change the tone to make it more like The Last of Us.
Yeah, and that's what it feels. In a way, this is the closest probably adaptation we're getting an actual movie, but this is basically the closest elements of film that we'll see of The Last of Us, because in the game is very similar to that.
And that's what this movie reminded me of, and I love that. I love the bloodiness. I love that it had no limits. It was killing kids. It was ripping hearts out, their skulls, brains, just straight practical. The very emotional scenes with the family and how they wish they were part of a family life really got to me. On every aspect of this movie was done right. I think Hugh Jackman and
Patrick Stewart's
performance, like as far as chemistry, has always been good, but I think this was probably one of the strongest ever.
Yeah, and it's
in the entire series.
Yeah.
This is the best X-Men film ever made. Best Wolverine film ever made. Up there in easily my top 1 or 2, not really saying failures, like, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, they got a lot of fuck-ups and mishaps or questionable calls.
Yeah. And
I'm just going to end it right here. My mark, this movie, I've not gave a movie a 10 out of 10 since Revenant. I'm going to give Logan a 10 out of 10. It's easily probably one of the best superhero films ever made. The Dark Knight.
I 100% agree with you. This so far is in my top 3 best superhero films of all time, and with that,
Yep.
I am giving this a 10 out of 10, and I highly recommend everyone to go watch it. And
oh
we
God,
thank you so much.
I want to see it again and again.
Yeah, I would too.
It's so good. It's unbelievably good.
Absolutely, and we thank everyone. We thank you so much for listening to our spoiler-filled review of Logan. For those of you who have seen Logan, comment below on what you guys thought of it, and we'll be having more reviews coming up here soon. And everyone definitely go check out Logan. It's so far my favorite X-Men film of all time. And until then, we thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be seeing you in our next review. We'll see you later.